Managers and coach are used interchangeably, but they're actually very different. Traditionally, a manager is in charge of everything with a club. Transfers, players, player development, coaching and tactics, and much more. In the last decade, we've seen the rise of the head coach, hired to do a very specific job. Coach the players and handle match days. Transfers and long-term strategies are handled by others within the club. In the last few years, hybrids of these roles have started popping up. And Majid and I want to have a conversation of what we think is best for a football club, from the point of view of the fans, players, and club owners. A like on the video, subscribing, and a comment would go a long way. So let's dive right into it. Majid, welcome.
What's up, man?
What do you think from a fan's point of view? What would you prefer, a manager or a head coach?
I, as a fan, being a little bit more old school and having grown up under Ferguson and Wenger, these sort of characters, I would prefer a manager personally. I would prefer a manager because I would prefer one person, one vision, and one sort of execution or follow through, and one person to blame at the end of the day. If you're down 1-0, I'd like to blame one person, not go to this person, then go to this person, then go to that person. So I would prefer a manager, but I can see how a head coach or even this hybrid model you talked about would be preferable by other people.
So
Go ahead.
I wanna ask you, like, in the last decade, I think the head coach rose up because managers, Gary Neville said, or head coaches only last 13 months at a club. So do you think it's because with managers, what you want mostly is stability, but you can't really get that this day and age? Do you feel that's the case?
I don't.
And would you want a manager just for that stability?
Well, I would. Yeah, theoretically there is that stability, but even Ferguson, I think, like, we forget, for the first 3 years he was under a lot of pressure, and had he not won the FA Cup or something, he would have been out of a job. These days you don't get those 3 years. You're not going to get. You're nowhere near that. So in that way, just in a very practical sense, is a manager even possible these days? I really don't know. The other thing is the job itself has sort of changed quite a bit, right? Back in the day, you really were just controlling your players, just making sure they were on the pitch and not at the pub. These days, there's, analytics, sports science. You're talking to doctor, like, you really are sort of an engineer, a CEO at a company, and not every personality is like that, because you're required to communicate, you're required to talk, you're required to know things, there's a billion things happening, so it's become it's a lot more. So in that way, just practically speaking, is a manager doable? I don't know anymore, frankly speaking.
Well, because of the rise of the technical director and the sporting directors, like, they normally take that responsibility anyway. With the head coach, they just sort of handle the players and the tactics. And I think that leads me to my next point, like, in terms of you like stability, you're a little bit old school, but if you were a player, what would you like to have? Would you like to have a head coach? Like, would you like that stability with a manager, or would you like a head coach and have other people within the club who that head coach reports to?
Well,
what do you
I
think? What would you want?
If you were a developing player, you would prefer a manager. Again, one person has been seeing you for the last 3-4 years. They've kept an eye on you, and they are invested in your development as a player. If I was a superstar, I would definitely want a coach. One guy, get bitched at, bitch at him, and that's it. Like, no need to talk to the assistant coach, the captain, and then the coach, and then this person. Like, so I think it depends on what type of player you are, but I would prefer a coach personally. What do you think? Like, what's the advantages?
For
what's
me,
the disadvantages?
I'm a little bit old school. I mentioned that previously, like, stability is something that I want as a fan. Stability is something that I'd want as from a manager as well. I like to be challenged. I'd like to be pushed, and I don't like politics personally. So, like, if I don't like the head coach, for example, I'm not gonna go to someone and say, I don't really like him, let's get rid of him. I'm not a superstar anyway. Like, so I just want to be developed as a player. So personally, I'd want a manager. But I don't know how I'd feel about what I'd want as a club owner. I mean, theoretically, I'd love to be Bayern Munich if I was a club owner. It's like the perfectly run club. Um, but what would you want as a club owner?
As a club owner, I would actually probably prefer a head coach, I guess. I feel as a club owner, at some point there might be that clash of egos. Um, whose club is it? The general, the general on the war, like on the battlefield, or the senators in Washington? That kind of deal. Like who actually is running the place?
Yeah.
Um, I also think just again based off of the number of different jobs and roles in the football club community these days. Again, the analysts, the technicians, all of the people required. I would want to divest as much as possible off of one person's plate and, have them concentrate on one or two key responsibilities or tasks or whatever.
I think they kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit, which with that one. Which this is why also the hybrid roles have started coming up. By the way, like there are managers. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is one of them. Like they've hired a sporting director and a technical director, but he still handles mostly player development, player transfers. He gets the veto. But because of the nature of football these days, which you pointed out, like you need to have other roles. You need to have that many people putting back into the club and developing the club for the future. You wanted to add something.
Well, with the hybrid model, I think it sounds perfect in theory. In practice, I think it's a little bit more difficult than just sort of, he's both or he's none of them. I think in practice, it becomes a lot more about the person in charge, who this hybrid coach slash manager is, and how well, again, they communicate and they sort of have their team working in conjunction. And I don't just mean the playing team, I mean the non-playing team specifically these days.
Look at Jose Mourinho. That's the example that you can think of just from what you said. Like he's hired as a head coach. He has to kind of go to Levy and convince him to loosen the purse strings. But he's not in charge because of that. I think his personality is such that it's very, very like headstrong. Things could fall apart very quickly as well. So I think that's also, he's probably a telling reason, not the sole reason. I don't want him to come after me, but actually I'm not big enough for him to come after me yet. So but you know what I mean? Like this is why the head coach is coming. So as a club owner, you kind of want a little bit of a hybrid. But for me, again, I'm old school. I kind of like the way Man United have done it. Go on.
I'd also actually be interested in a genuine hybrid model, which is as a club owner. Now we're speaking as a club owner. Imagine, I would like to see one day somebody with this much tactical nous and ownership stability, where they start off as a coach. They then do the hybrid thing, and then they become a manager in like 5 years. I don't know, again, if we're ever going to see that in the modern age. I don't know if we're ever going to see the old school manager in the modern age, frankly speaking. But it would be nice to see as an owner. I would like to pick sort of a coach, have him become a hybrid, learn the other parts of the job, and then have him installed, or her installed as a full-time manager who's just the football czar and doing everything and taking care of it all, and I can count my profit and deal with my shareholders.
I think that's kind of what everything that you want kind of links together really as a fan. Maybe not as a player, but definitely as a club owner. Like you want stability for the club, but because it's a results-based business now, because there's so much money involved, I think it really depends on your club. It depends on how wealthy your club, how successful your club is. Can you take the time and can you take the risk to appoint a manager and have that long-term vision? Let us know in the comments below what you guys think. What would you want as a fan, as a player, as a club owner? And we'll see you all next time. Take care.